What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for ClickHeads, finally able to break down all 9 of the launch day agents in Valorant. Not only will today's video break down all of the agents in the game, we'll also be giving some tips for the best ways to utilize all of the abilities, because they can be a bit tricky, especially when you're jumping right into it, potentially against players that have played before. So now, the first new character we're going to break down is Breach. Breach is an initiator in every sense of the word. There's 4 descriptors for the different types of agents in the game, and we'll define that more as we go on, but initiators like to start fights, as the term implies. Now, Breach's signature ability is called Fault Line, which allows him to send a seismic blast that goes through cover, and when it hits your opponent, it dazes them or concusses them, which is incredibly powerful. When a target is dazed, they're going to have stars over their head and not be able to shoot as quickly, which makes them much easier to focus down. Now, what you're going to notice, as with a lot of abilities in Valorant, I'm able to aim it using the mini-map to know where it's going to go. And what charging up Fault Line does is make it go a greater distance. So if you're safe behind cover looking to breach an enemy who is also quite a ways away, you can spend the time to charge this ability up to really get some distance. Here, I'm able to charge it from this door all the way into CT spawn, a massive distance. And remember, with all signature abilities, agents will get them at least once every round from the start, and each one has a different mechanic on how it comes back. Breaches, after use, goes on a 35-second cooldown, which really means you can use it in every fight. When you learn this, it is one of the strongest things in the game right now, in my opinion. Now, Breach also has other tools for punishing campers. His first ability, default bound to C, is called Aftershock, which is a slow-acting burst of damage through a wall. Now, targets that are far away from this don't get hurt very much, but I can tell you from testing that if Aftershock hits a target perfectly, it can one-shot. So, especially with teamwork and the combination of other utility, Aftershock can punish someone through a wall to one-hit kill them, or at the very least, apply a little bit of pressure damage when you're trying to siege an area. And that's not all. Breach's last mid-round ability is called Flashpoint, which if you're coming from CSGO, you're going to be quite comfortable using, I think. And just like his other abilities, allows you to target it on a wall, and after a delay, pops a flash that blinds everybody that's looking at it. And in Valorant, when a target is flashed, their eyes will be glowing to indicate that you have flashed them. They can turn away from it to reduce its effects a bit or entirely, and there is a delay before it explodes. Here you can see there's a bright orange on the wall where it's going to explode out. It's tricky, but it is possible, because it's on a delayed charge, to set up the flash for yourself and peek in front of it or right after. So either way, Breach has a lot of tools in order to get in. Most commonly, you'll find him pushing his way through double doors on Haven, or blasting his way out of Hookah on the map Bind. Now, last is Breach's ultimate, Rolling Thunder, which now this is like an upgraded version of his signature ability Fault Line, where it too emits out a seismic charge. But as you can tell from the mini-map, the area of effect is massive, and it doesn't require you to charge up for it to begin rolling out. However, it does have a bit of a delay for it to push outwards. You can press it basically immediately, but Breach will announce it with a voice line, so your enemies do have a bit of time to respond to it. It's not going to hit them instantly, but when it does hit them, it dazes them for like 3 times as long as Fault Line does, and knocks them up in the air. Remembering, targets that are in air don't have accuracy anyway, so the dazed effect blurs their vision a bit and slows down their fire rate, and until they return to the ground, they can't fire accurately anyway. Next agent up is Brimstone, who is a controller, and controllers typically have the strongest vision obscuring abilities and can lock down or control areas quite well. Now, Brimstone's signature ability is Sky Smoke, which, unlike many others, doesn't recharge mid-round, but it does allow you to purchase 3 of them. When you use Sky Smoke, Brimstone pulls up a mini-map that allows him to place smokes anywhere near him. It's about like a third of the map typically in range, but as long as you're set up behind cover, you can place down smokes in a variety of ways. You can do one at a time to try to delay enemies advancing, or you can drop multiple, if not all three, to essentially full smoke execute a site by yourself, cutting off an entire lane. Now, there's different types of smokes in Valorant, which will be important. Brimstone has filled smokes as opposed to hollow ones. Filled smokes are similar to CSGO, kind of, where once you step into them, it's blurry everywhere, and you'll have to be really close to someone else in the smoke to see anything. This makes them harder to play in, which leads Brimstone to have a bit more of a defensive playstyle that wants to set up map control. Now, his C ability, Stim Beacon, he places down in an area that increases your rate of fire. At the time we played, I believe it's only 10%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but on high fire rate automatic weapons, it can be the difference between you or your teammate securing a kill that you may otherwise wouldn't. It lasts on the ground for a few seconds, but keep in mind, enemies that rush into it also get the effects. It applies to anybody on both sides, so you want to be putting it in a safe location where enemies can't roll up on you and get rapid fire SMGs in your face. When you gain the effect, you keep it for a couple seconds after you leave the field as well, meaning you can charge up, then turn the corner and still be having the effect if you get in a gun battle immediately thereafter. Brimstone's final normal ability is an Incend launcher. You can set up an incendiary nade from long distance or bounce it around corners and creates a damaging zone on the ground that can punish campers or dissuade someone from pushing into you. Onto Brimstone's ultimate now. It's called Orbital Strike, and it does what you think. This allows you to target anywhere on the map, and after a couple second delay and warning for the enemy, a laser beam from the sky rains down that can potentially one-shot anything, and importantly, it goes through roofs and ignores all types of cover. So there is no hiding from this thing. You have to run out of it, and it's a good way to punish a hotspot on the map or to cover a bomb, or perhaps even clear out a bomb site. There's some spots on maps where it is very powerful to just sit around corners hiding behind cover, and Orbital Strike either clears them out by killing them or forcing them to move, which either case makes this ultimate quite powerful. Next up is CYPHER, who's in the Sentinel class, which I'd say is the most defensive playstyle of them all. CYPHER's good at holding off the flank and playing on the backside of the team, and has a lot of traps in his pocket that can really slow the enemy down. His first ability is Trap Wire, which is this little coin-shaped thing that allows you to target onto a wall, assuming that there is another wall it can attach to. And what this does is create a very useful trap to watch the flank. When an enemy runs through it, they're going to be marked for a few seconds, which allows you to see them through a wall, which is the best case scenario, but they can outplay it by walking. If they're not sprinting, they will have time to react to it with a sound cue and then shoot it, but even that will tell you where they are. Now, keep in mind, you'll want to put these at around chest height, because if they're too low, though it might trip them up and they might not see it, they also can jump over it. So you'll want to put it in the middle of a wall to securely deny the space. And you can press F to pick it up if you want to redeploy it. Now, CYPHER's Q is Cyber Cage, is one of the more unique styles of smokes in the game, where it has a very low throw distance. You basically drop it right in front of you. It doesn't go very far, but it has the added benefit that it also slows opponents that want to go through it. And whenever there are slow effects, there are also sound cues so that you know someone's trying to walk through it. Now, Cyber Cage is a hollow style smoke, which means when you walk through it, it's like you're going into a doorway to a small room. You can see inside of it, but because it slows you, you don't really want to be playing inside it. Now, once CYPHER throws it down, he does have to press F to activate it, which can be useful when you're planning to set up a fight. Say if you have the bomb planted, you don't have to burn Cyber Cage immediately. You can put it down, and then when you're anticipating the enemy, even from quite a distance away, press F to detonate it to deny the area. Now onto CYPHER's signature ability, which is his Spy Cam. No recharge on this one during the round, but you do get it each round. And with Spy Cam, you're going to want to try to put it as high as it lets you to get a nice vantage point of surveillance. And what it lets you do is be playing an entirely different area across the map even, but still gain information by periodically popping into your spy cam by pressing E again. If you see an enemy target with the spy cam, you can click on them to hit them with a tracking dart that will reveal their location indefinitely until they hold F to remove it, which they have to drop their gun to do. One cool tip is that if you see multiple targets come past your spy cam, it might be better not to alert them to the spy cam's presence, because whenever you spot out targets in Valorant, they will be spotted on your teammates' mini-maps with a red question mark. It won't mark exactly where they are, but you can get a ton of information by just sneakily holding it in place. But if there's just one target, you can mark them to see them through a wall and force them to put their guard down while you rush them. And last, spy cam kind of can be used in an offensive way. You can set it up around a corner to get you a free peek, but there's better agents at that job. Using it like this is a bit more budget, but there is a potential for it to be used for an aggressive peek if you really had to, but its best use is defensive. And now to Cypher's ultimate, Neural Theft. This is the anti-clutch ultimate, which what it does is you do have to eliminate an enemy target first, but when you do, you can walk over them, press the ult button, and then at that point, it'll mark through the map as well as on the mini map where the entire enemy team is. Now, this only lasts a few seconds and it doesn't track them perfectly. It takes a snapshot of where they were in that moment after a short channeling phase, but that's still usually a ton of information, and when you use it in the middle or near the end of a round, it just tells your team exactly where the enemy is coming from and really swings the odds of the round in your favor. Next up is Jett, who's our first duelist. Duelist implies that the agent has a lot of offense in their kit that sets them up to win 1v1s. But the downside to duelists is that they typically have the weakest map control effects. Jett's first ability is Cloud Burst, which sure, she can hold up to 3 of these small smokes, but they are quite small and they don't last very long. They can get the job done, but compared to like Brimstone smokes, which look kind of similar, his last, I think, 15 seconds or something. Hers are just a few. The huge pro tip I have with the Cloud Burst, though, is that if you hold the ability down while you're throwing it, it controls a little bit like a Stinger missile, and you can curve it around corners and stuff. And I think if you don't master this right away, she's gonna feel like she doesn't do much for the team. But if you do master it, and you can get these smokes exactly where you want from cover, then I think her duelist capabilities get unlocked a bit. Keep in mind that these smokes are filled, not hollow, which means someone who walks into them will have their vision obscured to the maximum degree, so you don't necessarily want to play inside them yourself, but instead set up around them. Now, Jett's more flashy abilities are the rest of her kit. She has a Q button that's called Updraft that instantly propels her in air. This can be used in combination with her passive ability that allows her to float by holding down the jump button. Now, keep in mind, just about every gun in the game is inaccurate when you're in air besides shotguns. So because of that, this tool is mostly used to get on top of boxes to get off angles, to quickly do a fast peek over a box just to gain information, or in combination with her ultimate Blade Storm. Now, Blade Storm can one-shot kill to the head, and it has no spread. It's precision accurate and is also perfectly accurate in air. So you can combine the ultimate with Updraft to get instant kills jumping above cover. Now, Blade Storm does have an alternate fire, which instead of one precise blade at a time, will send a volley of the blades in sort of a shotgun spread at the opponent, but it's very inaccurate and you have to be up close. The alternate fire has a bit of an RNG spread to it, but it will be extremely lethal at close range. Now, for Jett's final ability on her E, it's called Tailwind, which instantly propels Jett in the direction she's moving. If you're standing still, she'll go forward. And this is an effective tool to dash across distances to get into cover or maybe into a smoke where you think you're safe, but it's not very good at taking duels necessarily, because there is quite a delay period before you're able to pick your gun back up again. So you're not really going to be able to dash at an opponent or dodge them and then immediately follow up with some damage. However, up against maybe an AWP, if you dodge that first shot, there may be a big enough window before they can shoot again for you to follow up on a kill. But in most duels, due to the big delay before she can fire, you're going to be making yourself an easy target if you try to use this to dash at an enemy like you're playing Call of Duty or something. It doesn't work that way. But for what it's worth, whenever Jett gets 2 kills in a round, Tailwind will get another charge. And when you combine with the fact that her ultimate gets refreshed anytime her ult gets a kill, it is possible to chain together some really big playmaking moments with Jett. If you can use the dash and the ult and get a couple kills together, you can string together wiping the whole enemy team. The only problem is, outside of those big ult plays, Jett is going to have a much more challenging to use mid-round potential, so I would say use with caution, and you'll really want to master her cloud burst before you go into battle. Next up is Omen, who is a controller, but I'd say the most offensive of the controllers. He's got a good mix of abilities. His signature ability is Dark Cover, which allows you to place a smoke anywhere on the minimap. You press alternate fire to extend it out and E to bring it back in, and you click in order to set it. If you deploy this from cover reading the minimap, you can smoke off anything, which makes this, I think, pretty easy to use, but you have to keep in mind that it's got a weird personality to it. He's gonna throw the orb outward where you're pointing your crosshair, so you'll want to make sure that you keep your crosshair either horizontal to where you want it to go, or even throw it up in the air a little bit, maybe not too high, but it will bloom out, expand, and then drop to the ground like a bubble. So you want to be thinking about where you're trying to place it and how high you'll need to aim it so that it drops where you want. If you aim too low, it can go in the ground, and if you aim too high, it can get wasted. So you will have to do some trial and error to get this to work every time. Keep in mind that the smokes are hollow, which means it's both easier for you and your opponent to play inside them. As soon as you walk through the edge of them, you're all of a sudden in a little room. Now, Omen gets another one of these after 30 seconds, which makes it one of the more spammable smokes in the game, but it doesn't last as long as some of the other controller smokes like Brimstone or Viper once you deploy it, but it is stronger in the way that you can place it basically anywhere, tossing it long range through all sorts of walls and cover to help a teammate on the other side of the map. Now, keep in mind that this smoke can be comboed with Omen's 2 styles of teleport. His C ability is Shrouded Step, which is a quite short-range teleporter. It doesn't go very far, to be frank, but after a small channel does allow you to teleport into a new location. Shrouded Step can be good to get on top of a box if you think it's going to be a safer, higher up angle to play from. You can use it to get across gaps. So if the enemy saw you a long distance away at a choke, you can Shrouded Step to the other side to mess with their crosshair placement, or because it does commit a voice line, you could just do it in place right next to yourself to try to trick them and mind game them to think that you moved and you really didn't. Or it is possible to use it into your own smoke, but I think that's a little bit of a dangerous tactic, though when mastered does have some serious outplay potential. Just keep in mind that you can't shoot immediately after teleporting, so if your enemy catches you out, you will be a free kill. A bit more crazy and perhaps slightly more viable for the teleporting into smoke strategy is using his ultimate from the shadows, which allows you to teleport anywhere on the map. Yes, anywhere. You can teleport into the enemy spawn, you can put a smoke from across the map into a spot and teleport into it, but it does announce to the enemy that you're doing it, and it'll be even more obvious if the enemy's close to you where you teleport. It pretty much just tells them exactly where you are with sound cues. So you can't teleport onto an enemy without them realizing, and if you do, they have the option to either kill you during the channel, which won't actually kill you, it will just cancel your ultimate, or they can let the channel finish and then kill you for free, which is the better option for them, and frankly not what you want to have happen. So I suggest trying to teleport to a spot where you think is completely safe so the enemy doesn't hear you or expect you to be there. Last up for Omen is his Q named Paranoia. You can only buy one of these around, and what it does is instantly fire a shadow projectile forward that if it hits an enemy, they have their vision massively obscured. They actually have like short range eyesight. When you get hit by this, it looks like you're stuck in a smoke, essentially. In short range, you can't see. Unlike unless an enemy was right next to you. So although you have to be right on the enemy with this, kind of know where they are already and throw it right at them, when they do get hit by this, it's essentially like getting flashed in just a different kind of way. And when it does effectively hit them, you'll know with the indicator on their head. Next up is Phoenix, who is another duelist. His signature is Hot Hands, which works like just about every incen in the game. You can deny an area, but has an added benefit where if Phoenix stands in his own incen, he actually regenerates health. But keep in mind, health regen in Valorant stops if you take damage. So you can't heal through the enemy attacking you. It's something that you have to apply outside of combat. His C ability is called Blaze, and it puts up a wall that blocks line of sight, but keeping with the duelist theme, it doesn't block as much as other abilities do. But again, this ability as well also heals Phoenix, giving him 2 ways to heal himself, again, outside of combat. And just like Jett, Phoenix can control his vision obscuring ability as he throws it out. It's different than Jett. She holds on to the ability button, whereas Phoenix needs to hold down the fire button after he presses it. Not sure why those are different, but they are. And when you do, you can apply a curve to the wall to help place a path for you and get the wall exactly where you want it. Keep in mind, like all duelists, the vision obscuring abilities don't last very long, so you'll want to get good use out of it and get where you're going or regen your health with it. But Phoenix's final ability is Curveball, which has a flashbang effect. And the tricky part about it is that it has quite the awkward throw trajectory until you get used to it. If you're used to flashes in Counter-Strike, you kind of have to forget what you know to get good at these. And the secret tip is that they always go on the set trajectory. You can curve them to the left or curve them to the right, but they don't really bounce and bobble like flashes do in CSGO. Instead, Curveball needs to be used from safety around cover, and I suggest that you spend some time in customs really learning how to put these exactly where you want. Otherwise, you're going to be flashing yourself. I've seen many high-level players do it, which made me feel a bit better when I flashed myself a dozen times. It does take some getting used to. It is possible to flash it above boxes and above cover, but remember, you want to aim it so that the explosion is in line of sight of the enemy. It does come out faster than Breach's flash, but I would say it's a bit harder to use. It is possible to throw it while you're running in with your back turned, which might be good on a classic rush C no stop when you're force buying, or it can be used to mask a ranged jiggle peek in a rifle battle. Keep in mind that the curveball will not affect you if the line of sight is broken by a vision obscuring ability. So just like normal cover would, you can use your own blaze wall to toss a curveball on the other side of it, which can set up for some favorable duels, because you can set up the wall, be running up next to it, toss the curveball on the other side, then immediately peek out afterward, which with cover you typically can't do because it's in your way. Keep in mind, enemies that are flashed will have bright white over their eyes, so you know if they can see you or not. And last up, it gets real spicy with his ultimate, and it's called Run It Back. Possibly one of the best ults in the game. Run It Back has you channel it for a moment, placing a marker down for where you're going to return in a few seconds if it times out, or where you'll respawn if you die. So it gives you an extra life. It allows you to run in like an idiot. And believe me, when I read that, I'm like, sign me up. Now, keep in mind, the enemy will hear you announce it, and because it marks on the ground where you're going to go with sort of this flame symbol, it is possible for the enemy to camp out where you're going to respawn, and there is a channel that you have to fully animate before you can even pull your gun back up again. So you are vulnerable after you use it, so you'll want to make sure to use it from safety, then run in. But assuming you do that, having a free extra life, that's pretty good, isn't it? Now for our final sentinel, we have Sage. Her signature ability, Healing Orb, can be used with ult fire to heal Sage, or with primary fire to heal a teammate at a medium range distance. Right as you use it, it goes on a 35-second cooldown, which means you're going to get multiple uses out of it in a round, making it the most efficient way to heal, especially considering there's only 2. Sage's other 2 normal abilities are both crowd control in nature. Barrier Orb is bound to C, and you can tilt it by holding down alternate fire to turn it, or you can immediately rotate it by pressing C again. A cool tip is that you can rotate it early in anticipation of needing it, put it away, then bring it back, and it'll remember where you had it last. Barrier Wall is considered S tier among abilities in Valorant at the moment because it lasts like a minute, longer than any controlling effect in the game, basically, other than like Cypher's traps, in which time the enemy can't pass it unless they have a jump or teleport type ability. They can break the wall by shooting it, but it takes a lot of ammo, reveals their position. You can place it just to block off chokes and access points. Wall can also be used to elevate yourself or a teammate to peek at a higher angle, get on top of a box, that kind of thing. Though I don't think that's as strong as controlling the map, but it is flexible in that way. Sage's last normal ability is Slow Orb that she tosses out to create a huge AoE where the enemy get, I believe it's 80% of their move speed reduced. They basically freeze in place. Enemies hit by this, they are fish in a barrel. If the enemies try to move, there will be a ticking sound effect revealing their location. And as Sage can get 2 of these and a wall, she has a lot of lane control in her kit. Last ability is her ultimate Resurrection, where you have to stand near a teammate, and after a small channeling phase, the ally will be brought back to life, which is quite strong, but possibly not the strongest part of her kit, especially in comparison to how nutty some of the ultimates in the game are. Sage typically likes to play defensive on her own because her crowd control utility is so good, but she also can be played backing up a teammate, healing them, or rezzing them to get another chance at an off-peak battle or an aggressive play. Next up is Sova, who is our second initiator alongside Breach. But whereas Breach has more direct duel setup, Sova is more about gaining information. The signature ability is Recon Bolt, which you can shoot to attach to a surface that lets out a pulse that will mark enemies. Now, an enemy will see on the minimap and in front of them that this very important Recon Bolt is on them, but if you place it at the right angle, you can obscure it to get better use out of it. And if the enemy's got to shoot it, they can't be also shooting you at the same time. So it's possible to set up peaks with it, especially if you're going to be trading out with your team. Keep in mind, as far as I know, everything that affects you in this game, if it's line of sight dependent, which this is, smokes block off its effect. So unless it's a penetrate ability, vision obscuring effects stop things like this from hitting the enemy. So you can't recon them in a smoke per se, unless it's hollow. Like, you could put it inside a smoke, and if the smoke's hollow, then you can see them, but if it's filled, you won't. And if they're behind one, or behind cover for that matter, the recon arrow won't reveal them, and it's really obvious where it is, frankly. Like, it shows off on screen and on their mini map. So keep in mind, you're probably not going to surprise them with this at all, but instead more so shows where both of you are. Charging up the bow will increase the speed that it travels, also the distance, and hitting the alternate fire allows you to set it up to bounce. You can do 2 bounces if you want, though it's going to take some mastery to really learn some nutty spots across the map where you can set up to bounce the recon arrow multiple times to land exactly where you want. Important to remember that at least right now, Valorant has no skybox, so all abilities can be used from long distance if you can find a place to make them work to punish a spot on the map. And also important, the recon arrow goes on a 35-second cooldown like all of the cooldown signature abilities in the game. Sova has another bow ability. His Q is called Shock Bolt, and this will function just like the recon bolt, but have a damaging effect in a small AoE. If you hit somebody with this, it does quite a lot. When we tested it, it did 90, but it does have fall off, I believe. And just like the recon bolt, you can set to bounce it around corners, but whereas most Valorant agents have insane damage abilities that last on the ground a while, this one is instant, just does a burst of damage, similar to his fellow initiator Breach. His last normal ability is Owl Drone, which lets you set out a recon drone that you can fly around. It has very deliberate, limited sensitivity and movement so that it is a bit difficult to wield to check the corners that you want to check, but it is a free peek that, just like with CYPHER Spycam, if you mark a target, you'll be able to know exactly where they are, or just spotting them out, seeing them at all, will put a question mark on the minimap for your team. This is a good ability to use when there's a lot of smokes in your way, or if you just want to find out if an enemy is lurking around the corner without sticking your neck out. I think it's best used when it's the first thing peeking ahead of a teammate to spot out for possibly a duelist to go take an aim battle. Now for his ultimate, Sova has Hunter's Fury, which allows him to shoot up to 3 times a wall-piercing energy blast that damages and potentially kills enemies through walls, or if you hit them with it, they'll be marked. So at the very worst, they'll be spotted out to be finished, or if you know exactly where they are, defusing a bomb or camping in a smoke, behind cover, Hunter's Fury can take them out. Keep in mind that you have to use them immediately or you won't get all 3 of its uses. If you wait any moment without firing it off, you're going to lose a use, and it doesn't have infinite range, though it does go kind of far. You'll want to be in a doable distance before you pull it out, because once you do, you need to shoot immediately, or else you're going to be wasting a charge. And the last agent left is our final controller, Viper. Viper has possibly the strongest smokes in the game. Her signature ability is Toxic Screen, which she gets every round, but only 1 use of it. Toxic Screen can be launched across the map, which makes it kind of insane. You can look to your mini map to see where it can go if you're throwing it above buildings, and with that, you can set up for clear lines of sight lanes for you and your team to take. Similar to Toxic Screen, she also has Poison Cloud on her Q, which she throws down an emitter, but both the screen and the cloud use her toxin resource. If she uses both at the same time, her resources will be drained quite quickly, or she can bounce between the 2 of them. But in my experience, the toxins recharge at a pretty decent rate, meaning that in a round, you can set these things up to last the full duration a few times, meaning that with just these abilities alone, Viper has the potential to lock down lines of sight on areas for the whole round. Not to mention her pretty insane ult, which we'll get to, but on her C, her first ability is Snake Bite, which nothing too fancy with this. It's just a poison version of a Molotov. Just like other launchers though, it can be sent across the map in order to land in a specific location you want to clear out, or it can be put into your poison cloud effects in order to punish enemies rushing you down. Last up is her ultimate, Viper's Pit, which you select an area to place it down in front of you. There's a little marker, an indicator, and from that point, the pit will expand out, and you can think of it as sort of a poisonous cloud, where it doesn't go down in a set area, but instead expands based on where you put it. So if you put it in an area that doesn't have a lot of airspace, like in hallways, it's going to stretch out further, or if you put it out in open space, it's going to be one large blob in more of a set distance, but it's about the size of a bomb site, maybe a bit bigger anyway, so you really lock down an area of the map when using it. If you step out of Viper's Pit for more than like a second, it will cancel the ultimate, but if you don't, Viper's Pit will be emitted for, I believe, the whole round. I've never seen one timeout, and the enemies have their vision obscured massively while inside the cloud. They can barely see anything. It's a bit of a halfway point though between the filled smokes, in my opinion. You can see a little bit more than those, but it's not hollow for them for sure, or for you for that matter. It's sort of a mixture, like close range hollow. I believe it's the only smoking effect that's like it in the game. Remember as well, enemies that go into the poison cloud will have their health decayed over time, all the way down to, I believe, 1. It won't kill them, and it will regen when they escape the poison cloud, but it pretty badly injures them, making it even worse to fight inside it. But targets that are near you inside of Viper's Pit will be marked, allowing you to easily clean them up. A few tips for this: remember, because it has a marker, it is possible to point it around a corner when you're casting it. That can be a good strategy when you're retaking a site where the bomb's planted. You can place down Viper's Pit from safety and then make your way to the bomb. Conversely, on defense, it can be used to solo a site, but just remember, it does obscure vision for everybody. So because of that, it is possible for enemies to get past all the crazy smoke and get through you past your team. It is risky, of course, because you don't want to die to Viper, but if they take that chance and get past you, it can create lanes for the enemy to flank you hardcore. So there is a bit of a trade-off to the vision. Your team can't really help because they can't see either, and the enemy might use it to get behind you. So keep that in mind. But with that, that's all 9 agents in Valorant. I hope you guys did enjoy this ability breakdown video. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to ClickHeads and hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live, because there's going to be a lot of Valorant videos around the corner and you're not going to want to miss out. But that's the end of the video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for ClickHeads. We'll see you guys next time.